do something. So this is now my 8th year as a stroke and turn official in the league, and about my 5th year as the starter referee for Hunters Hill. Don't purport to have all the answers in any way. So let's try to make this an interactive session tonight. If you have questions, please shoot. I know there's a chat room. Kelly Smith, our league president, is online, and she's going to be taking a look at the chat room and kind of letting me know if there are any questions that pop up that we need to address. So, and if you have questions, please feel free and jump in, and we'll go ahead and get going. Again, I apologize for the late start. That was me. I'm single parenting tonight and had to be in a couple places at the same time, so had to put this one off by 30 minutes. But definitely appreciate y'all being here. So we're going to talk about 2 positions tonight, the deck referee and the starter. At a number of our pools, that's filled by 1 person. Certainly plenty of our pools this summer will have 1 person in each position, in each of the referee and the starter position. So we're going to talk about them like they're 2 roles, but when it's 1 person, you kind of get to fill both of those roles. So the deck referee is responsible for a fair environment in which the swimmers will be competing. They have full authority over all the officials, and this is kind of a key thing, shall assign them to positions and instruct them. And we had about 50 new stroke and turn officials at our pool last week for training. And so hopefully this summer there's a chance to instruct and really help those stroke and turn officials get better at what they're doing. You need to enforce all applicable rules and decide all questions relating to the actual conduct of the meet. You want to provide the best possible environment for maximum swimmer performance. And remember this, a key thing, it's your pool and you're in charge of this meet. The deck referee is the person who's running the show. The philosophy around officiating, again, provide safe and fair competition for all. And I really stressed this with our new folks last weekend. Officiating is an exercise in observation and not inspection. Another way I've said this is kind of the tie goes to the swimmer. If you didn't see it happen, you certainly can't call it. So we're not inspecting all of the athletes, but we are observing them to see if we see any infractions. As the deck referee, you set the tone for the deck. If you got a great positive attitude, that's going to go a long way. Work closely with the starter. You guys are a team. Talk to each other, and you need to know what each other is expecting of you. Before the meet starts, you want to get there certainly in plenty of time to look over the course, make sure there's enough space for the starter. The new position that we have this summer in our use of swimmingly is called the scorekeeper. And that scorekeeper is probably going to be in a real close place next to the starter and the deck referee so that y'all can talk to each other all the time and talk about the DQs as they come in. You want to make sure you've got adequate areas for the deck officials, your stroke and turn officials, and the timers on deck too. And with all the equipment, you want to check the blocks, the lane ropes, the markers, kind of the 15 meter marker. Make sure the backstroke flags are not falling into the water, and that's working. The recall rope, that it's working well. Make sure that the stroke and turn officials have radios and headsets and that they're all working, that you're all in the same channel, that you're not listening to another pool down the street or something else that's going on in the neighborhood. So make sure you have a clear channel. And then the new thing this year is make sure that everybody's connected to Swimmingly. And I believe you're going to need an Apple device as the starter in order to start the meets with Swimmingly. It's the timers who can have an Apple or an Android device to be timers. And if you have concerns or if you need one, please check with your parent representatives for your team. There were suggestions last week that you can get cheap refurbished Apple devices to do this operation. They don't have to be on a cellular network. They can just be a Wi-Fi only device and connect to the network that the Swimmingly device or Swimmingly system makes at the pool, and that should work pretty well. I'll take just a quick pause if there's any questions, or Kelly, if anything's popped up in the chat room just yet. Okay, thank you. So during the meet, now we started races, and this was one thing I taught the new guys last week too. Really consider your body language, that you are on camera while you're running this meet. So you don't want to be just hanging out with the starter in this position. You want to make sure you're focused on the race. By observing the race, you might see an infraction as well as what the stroke judge sees. And when you're thinking about the event, you want to think about what you're looking for with a positive swim. So in butterfly, you're looking for 2 arms moving simultaneously over the water at the same time, and a double kick together with the feet not wildly alternating, but feet together as they're being kicked. So think on what you expect to see when that next stroke is being swum. Again, remember, it's your pool. You're going to set the meet pace, the precedent, and the feel for that session. And a calm demeanor really is infectious. If you act like you're in charge, that lets everybody feel a lot better about what they're doing. You'll have heat sheets this summer, like always, and you'll want to record all of the infractions on your heat sheet. You want to take a look at the next heat to see if there's any open lanes. What are we expecting next? Is anybody missing? And then just keeping an eye on the pool and watching for any issues or situations that could cause a problem. The pre-meet meetings, the coaches will have a scratch meeting like they always do, just to kind of make sure we get the right people in the right place. And then the new meeting this summer is going to be the huddle, or the swimmingly setup that we're going to have. The timers will be involved in that, and this is where we'll get the timers plugged into the swimmingly system. We'll get the stroke and turn officials or stroke judges plugged into the swimmingly system, and also the starter plugged into the swimmingly system. At this point in time, maybe you get the timers over there first and you host your timers meeting. Then when you get the stroke and turn officials together, you can coach them on the strokes, review any handouts that you have for them, and then review the stroke briefing that you can go over with them. For disqualifications, the stroke and turn officials have all been instructed to record those potential disqualifications in the Swimmingly app. If you over the headsets have talked with the stroke and turn official and it's recorded and you think it shouldn't be a disqualification, you can work to reject that call by working with the scorekeeper in the Swimmingly app. What we trained the stroke and turn officials on over the weekend, the new ones, was let's make sure that they call that disqualification into the referee before they record it in Swimmingly. A week ago, I may have had some of you on a returning stroke and turn official training, and I think that was up in the air a little bit. But what we want to do is have the stroke and turn officials call that in first, and then confirm it with you, and then they can enter it into the Swimmingly system. Things that you're going to listen for as the stroke and turn officials call those in is, were they confident in their call? Were they in the proper position? If they were talking with someone else, that's grounds to overturn their call. Be sure to ask questions if you didn't have a clear picture on what they're calling in. And remember always that the benefit of the doubt goes to the swimmer. And then that line on the bottom says accept or reject the call in Swimmingly. There's not really an accept function. Once the stroke and turn official puts it in, the call is in Swimmingly, but you can work with the scorekeeper to deny or reject that call in the Swimmingly system. And so after that slide, I'll pause and see if there's any questions or if anybody's put anything into the chat room for us. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. So that was kind of just the beginning of the role of the referee. And now we'll talk about the starter. And you can see this Steve and Steve put this in big, bold letters last time. We want to ensure that every swimmer receives a fair start. So that's kind of the main goal of the starter. One thing that has helped me every summer, and as I do this for USA Swimming now, but this video on the USA Swimming website, the philosophy and protocol video on how to do the start, that's massively helpful and something that you'll want to watch. Also, I should have pointed out, I didn't call it out on the first slide, but if you guys want a copy of this information, just because it has some links in it that you might want to use, please send me an email, and my email address is kjreese, R-E-E-S-E, @yahoo.com. The starters need to be flexible and adaptable to any situation that may arise, and you'll work with the referee to handle situations as they come up. Be patient, and that's especially tricky in a summer league starting position, right? A lot of these kids are not year-round swimmers and aren't professionals at getting up and off the blocks. So just be patient. We'll apply the rules, and we're here to let the swimmers swim. Another key thing I added this year is at www.swimmingly.app/training. There's all kinds of terrific trainings on being a deck referee with Swimmingly, being a scorekeeper, being the starter, and using the Swimmingly system. It's probably worth it to be familiar with all of those roles as a starter and referee. But this is the place to check those trainings out on swimmingly.app/training. So again, some roles for the starter before the meet and the session. Make sure you're familiar with the starting system. Make sure you test it. Make sure that it works. Make sure that you've got the equipment in the right place on the deck, that the volume level's good, that the strobe light on the starting box is visible, the cables are all secure. You definitely want to perform a test start to get a feel for how that's going to sound and how your starting button works. Work with the referee to make sure you can be heard from all the blocks. My starter in our pool is in lane 1. I usually yell down to lane 6 and make sure they can hear me. And then assist the referee in conducting any of the pre-meet meetings that are happening. So then we're going to spend a little bit of time here talking about the start, just the start itself. And again, you'll see, be patient. So you want to make sure that you're allowing all of the swimmers to assume the position on the blocks that they want to use for the start. You want to see that their feet are in their final chosen position with at least 1 foot at the front of the block or deck. And usually you'll see those toes curled over the edge. In Summer League, for sure, you're going to see plenty of swimmers who just aren't ready to get up on those tall blocks yet. So with 8 and unders, 6 and unders, definitely, they may ask if they can start from the side and not from the block, and that's okay, as long as they follow the rules of the stroke that they're swimming. So a forward start in a freestyle, they can do an in-water start as long as that's a forward start, or a backstroke start as appropriate for the backstroke. You'll deliver the take your mark instruction in a calm, conversational tone. It's loud enough for the swimmers to hear it over any possible crowd noise, but not so loud that you're shouting it at the swimmers. In the starter training, they've kind of coached us that if you are excited in delivering that command, the swimmers get more excited and more nervous, and that can lead to more false starts. So very calm about take your mark. It says use a cadence that's inviting with a slight falling in pitch. So take your mark, take your mark. You're inviting the swimmers to swim. Anytime I know that I'm going to be starting before I get to USA Swim Meet or one of these Summer League swim meets, I practice my take your mark a million times. Still don't think I'm great at it, but you just get better by practicing. So that's an important thing to do. This is an interesting thought too, that swimmers are the ones who start the heats, not the starter. Certainly you're going to push the button to start everything, but it's the swimmers who are going to show you that they're ready for the starting signal when they assume that position that they're ready to start. So when all the swimmers have settled into that starting position and they're stationary, pause for just a fraction of a second and then push the start button. And if there's a swimmer taking too much time to take their position, stand the heat and reset. And we'll talk about that language in just a minute. Any questions on this slide about the start? Okay, we'll move on. So now we'll talk about kind of what you say in the Summer League. If you're a USA starter, you know we use whistles. We found that Summer League, the neighbors don't tend to like all those whistles at 8 o'clock in the morning, so we just tend to talk to the swimmers a lot more. You start by announcing the event. This is event number 1, the boys 6 and under 4x25 meter freestyle relay. This is heat 1. It's going to be 4 lengths of the pool, 1 length swum by each swimmer in the freestyle. Then you'll say swimmers step up. Once you've announced the event and heat, invite the swimmers to step up. You watch for their toes over the edge of the gutter in the pool or over the edge of the starting block. Make sure your timers are ready, that their washes are clear. Then you deliver the take your mark command. Once they're set, you press the start button. After the heat, you'll summarize the disqualifications for the meet. And that's usually a referee activity who will say, coaches, we had a disqualification in lane 2 or lane 5, however you need to summarize those disqualifications for the coaches. Questions about the starter procedures? Okay, so then for backstroke and medley relay, those are both going to be in the water starts where the swimmer has their back facing the main part of the pool, their chest is facing towards the starter blocks. So again, announce the event, the distance, the heat number, how many lengths of the pool. You'll say swimmers step in, inviting the swimmers to step into the water, and then give them a place your feet command. And at this point as the starter, you want to make sure that the toes are flat on the wall. They can be above the water, but they cannot be curled over the gutter. And that's for the starter to check. And feel free to take your time on that. Make sure you get the kids' toes in the right positions. More of an issue for younger kids is they're going to be new at this. The older kids, this shouldn't be an issue. They should know what they're doing. So then again, ask if your timers are ready or the watch is clear. Take your mark. After everybody is set, Press that start button. And again, after the heat, the referee should summarize any disqualifications that happened for that heat. So again, the only difference here is that this is a backstroke start. Medley relay starts with the backstroke and certainly the backstroke events. So you invite the swimmers to step in and place their feet. I remember one of my very first meets starting medley relays and telling everybody to get on the blocks, and these 15, 18-year-old boys are staring at me like, what do you mean get on the blocks, dummy? So just recognize that the medley relay starts with the backstroke. And again, this is where I was saying we we're going to talk about the language to kind of reset the field. If someone comes down late or if someone isn't settling quickly enough, just relax the field with a simple "stand, please" comment to everybody. Even if they're swimming backstroke and they're in the water, it sounds kind of funny to say that, but that's the language to use to relax the field and reset the heat, is just "stand, please." If there's a false start, you'll press and hold the start button to trigger the recall buzzer. And you'll see that in Swimmingly. I'll show you that on our screen in just a minute. The Swimmingly app has a recall buzzer that sounds just like that Colorado timing system. If you need to, drop the recall rope. There are going to be 6, 7, 8-year-olds who just aren't paying attention to that recall noise. I've had coaches jump in the water to stop them before. You don't want to make them get all tired by swimming an entire 25 only to have them have to come back and do it again. So then you can restart the heat when the swimmers are ready. You may have to swim the heat later. If a kid made it halfway down the pool before he got out, you want to give him a chance to breathe before you start his heat. Now, talk about that with the referee. Probably talk about it with the scorekeeper. There is a way to do that fairly simply and Swimmingly. And then just get that slotted at the right place and time. So after the start, like we were saying, you'll keep that starting device kind of ready in case you need to recall the heat. You keep an eye on the swimmers until all of the heads have surfaced. Then you put the microphone back in a position where it can't be bumped, where the cord isn't in a traffic zone that's going to cause tripping or cause the starter box to fall into the pool. That's about the worst thing that could happen. Make sure that the next heat swimmers are starting to report to the right lanes. If you know you have 4 swimmers in the next heat, make sure that you're seeing those 4 swimmers in the next heat. On your heat sheet as the starter, keep track of any no-shows and false starts, for which there should be a record. The referee is going to be making sure they're watching the stroke judges to watch for raised hands. All of the stroke judges have been said that the very first thing you do when you see a disqualification or an infraction is raise your hand and make sure you get that starter referee's attention. And then once everything starts to wind down, you can start to begin preparations to start the next heat. Questions about the start itself at this point?
Yes, there's a few questions about, are we announcing the whole event for each heat? And do you want DQs called over the starter speaker to the coaches?
So 2 good questions. No, you do not have to call DQs over the starter box to the coaches. When I've done it in the past, I've blown a whistle and just said lane 2, lane 6 is where we've had disqualifications. So not something you have to announce over the speakers. And then what we have done traditionally in this league is announce the entirety of every heat and event every time we've had a heat. I know some places might do that differently. I know with the young kids, it really helps make sure the kids are in the right place at the right time. With the older swimmers, you might be able to get away just saying, this is heat 2 of the 100 meter 12 and under, or I'm sorry, 11, 12 backstroke. You might not have to announce the whole thing for those guys. But it is I think it's a good practice to be in, and just make sure everybody's in the right place at the right time. Any other questions? Okay, we'll do the next slide. Just a quick start about the false start. When you see a swimmer who's in a stationary position, they establish a kind of a vertical plane at the front of the block. Notice it's not lined up with the block, but they'll make a vertical plane kind of with the top of their head. Breaking that plane forward in a forward start or backward in the backward start for the backstroke before the starting signal is a false start. So you're watching for movement relative to that plane that the swimmer establishes. It's not twitching muscles or a back feet that wiggles a little bit. It's just for forward or backwards movement before the starting signal. And again, the definition of the false start, anyone starting before the starting signal is charged with a false start. The first false start for any swimmer should be recalled. A second false start by that same swimmer would result in a disqualification. I know in the 11 years I've had a kid in the league, I have not seen a disqualification for a false start. The starter referee, if they have to, would go over and talk with the kid and talk about what they need to do and give them some coaching before they disqualify him for a false start. Questions about the false start? Okay. I did want to show a couple swimmingly screens. Tonight, I'm not kind of the swimmingly trainer, but I did want to show a couple of the screens that you'll see as the starter, and we'll get through that. I also wanted to invite any of you. I've invited the last couple trainings that I've done, the new stroke and turn officials and the returning stroke and turn officials. This Saturday morning at 9 at Hunters Hill Pool, we're going to be running kind of a fake meet and running through all the swimmingly screens for different positions. We'll have timers, we'll have starters, referees, stroke and turn officials, and scorekeepers. And so we'll get to practice all of this. So we can look over everybody's shoulders. I will encourage a lot of patience as we do this. It'll be our first time running a big meet. We have our own practice meet in the next week or so, where we get the chance to actually practice this again. But it'll give us all a chance to kind of get to know what these screens look like and how they work. I can tell you, the more I've used them, the more intuitive they are and the easier they are to get through everything. The first screen on the far left is just the screen that you'll see, again, on an iPhone. When you're ready to start the heat, you're plugged in, we're starting a heat, and you literally tap anywhere on that screen, and it'll make the beep noise that you hear out of a Colorado timing system to start the event. I know at Hunters Hill, we've bought a cable that actually integrates the phone into the Colorado timing system. So it'll do the strobe also, the sound of the strobe. So you just tap anywhere on that screen to start the heat, you'll hear the beep. The blue kind of oval that's down in the far left corner of that screen is a recall button. And if you push that button, you'll get a repeated series of the beeps that indicates to the swimmers that the heat's being recalled. When the heat is over, that green time that you see there on the far left screen is going to continue to tick and tick and tick, even after the 6th or 8th timer has pressed their stop button. At that point, you tap anywhere on the screen, and you'll get the second screen that'll say, okay, reset for the next heat. And you'd push that large button, it'll bring you back to the first screen, and it'll say next heat, it'll say, well, I guess it'll say next heat number 3 at that point, but if you're on the first heat, it might say next heat number 2. So that's the reset for next heat. You'll also see a recall heat button on there, or just cancel to get back to the screen. And if your next heat is actually a new event, you would click on the blue bar up on top where you see it say test individual event. And that'll bring up the third screen where you actually select the next event that you're going to swim in the pool. That order is just slightly different events than what we have in Rocky Mountain Swim League. First event is the boys 6 and under 25 yard 4x25 free relay. Second one is the girls 6 and under. So that's what you'd see there. Anytime you need to switch to a new event, you would click that blue bar on the far left and click on the event that you want to run. It is interesting, you are able to combine events, and I would encourage you again to watch those swimming league trainings to learn all about how to do that. You basically select multiple events to start, and then the events are combined. So that same functionality that we used to have just using the Meet Manager software is available to us in Swimmingly. I will stop and pause for any questions on Swimmingly. I will also caution you that I have just a few answers for you on them, but if you want, we can take those questions to our event on Saturday also. We're hoping to get the Swimmingly folks at some point to join us at our pool on Saturday morning to take some of those questions too. So any questions on Swimmingly at this point?
Got a couple. What's the cable called that allows you to connect to the strobe?
If you hang out at the end, I'll go run through my emails and tell you what that is. I found two things. So it looks like, I think the microphone plugs into part of the Colorado timing system through a larger jack. And then it looks like the kind of jack that you would just plug into a headphone jack on an iPhone. I had to use an adapter between the lightning cable and this cable that I bought in order to get them both to plug in into the right place. But if you hang out, I'll run through my emails at the end and find that for you.
And then what time does it start on Saturday, 9 or 1?
9 a.m. And that was a change from a couple weeks ago when we first published it. We're going to start at 9 a.m. this Saturday morning
And at what pool is that at?
at Hunters Hill Pool.
And the app can act as an external controller of the timing system, question mark?
Yeah, it'll integrate into the Colorado timing system. We're going to find out how well this weekend. I know people have done that on other in the league in the past, and swimmingly themselves recommended these cables and plugging them into the Colorado timing system. So they should integrate there.
Oh, wait, why exactly is the strobe needed? We didn't use it last summer since the starter starts all the timers phone.
Oh, that's a great point. So this is a point where I'm thinking ahead of myself and thinking that I was going to have to tell timers to watch the strobe. You're exactly right. The strobe light is probably not needed. And you're exactly right that when the starter starts the heat and swimmingly, all of the clocks will start at the same time. So there's no need for the strobe. Thank you.
And somebody brought up a good point here. The reason to continue to have a strobe is if you have any hearing impaired swimmers.
That's very true. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Just the tips and tricks of being a starter and referee. You know, be confident. You're in charge. You've got the answers, and feel relaxed about it. Again, that calm, cool demeanor is going to go a long way towards having a real positive meet. So you want to be calm and patient. And kind of just what I was saying, your voice and demeanor set the tone for the swimmers at every start. So if you're screaming, "Take your mark," at these guys, they're going to get amped up and nervous. But if it's a real calm, inviting, "Take your mark," take your mark, kind of a downhill sounding "take your mark" noise. It calms the swimmers down and they'll settle in a little bit better. This is interesting to think about. You focus on the field and not one particular swimmer. When you're starting, you're trying to make sure that everybody gets a fair start. If you're focused on one swimmer, you might miss something that another swimmer is doing, or you're over judging that one swimmer that you're focused on. And this last point, especially in the summer leagues, don't hesitate to use that recall option. If you feel like an external noise, maybe a coach's whistle or an activity around the starting blocks interfered with a swimmer's ability to achieve a fair start. And then practice with swimmingly. I think most of the teams are going to have practice meets before we get going. Hopefully that gives everybody a chance to iron things out. And again, please feel free to come join us at Hunters Hill Pool this Saturday morning at 9. And again, bring your patience with you. We think we know what we're doing, and we'll find out how well it goes on Saturday morning. And I think that's the last slide that I had in particular. Are there any other questions that we want to run through this evening, or any of you stroke judge veterans who feel like we need to bring up something else that I may not have talked through?
I have a couple listed here, but I think people can jump into conversation too if they want. But I'll read these that are here. Should we bring our own devices Saturday? Is one.
Yeah, if to the extent that you can, that'd be great. Initially, we'll have space for a starter, a referee, 6 timers. We're a 6-lane pool at Hunters Hill, and then 4 stroke and turn officials. We might plug in a couple more stroke and turn officials there, and then happy to have all of you guys try any of these spots as we move throughout it. I'm not yet sure how well swimmingly will let us all move between positions. We might have to kind of. The swimmingly setup meeting is called a huddle. So maybe after 3 or 4 events or practices in certain positions, we can re-huddle and put different people in different places and let them try different positions. If you're really showing up because you want to see the starter role happen, maybe just congregate around the starter's box, and whoever's doing the starting can hold up the phone and show everybody what's going on and how that's working.
And then does a false start count against the entire field?
Good question. It does not count against the field. It counts against a swimmer. And it's 2 false starts against a swimmer where they would be disqualified.
And then finally, this one's a little longer. Somebody kind of stated, but you also need to have the strobe for the kids. Light travels faster than sound. Plus each team should still have backup timers in case something happens with Swimmingly software.
Sure. Yep. All fair and good advice.
And that's all I see.
Okay, folks, again, if you need to get a hold of me, kjreese@yahoo.com is the place to go. Let me search my email real quick if you want to know the name of that cable. I can tell you the place that I got it was called Cables for Less. And I got it, I learned about it from the swimmingly.app website. And there's a lot to this, to the name of this cable. So I'll read it kind of slowly. It's a 7-foot, 1/4 inch stereo male, MALE, to TO 3.5 millimeter TRRS male connector. So male end to male end, built with Belden, BELDEN 1800 1800B, B as in boy, dark gray cable. Might be better to go onto the swimmingly.app website, or might be easier to go on there and maybe just search on cable connectivity or something along those lines and see if you find a link on there to this location. But I got it again at cablesforless.com. And that was the description of that cable. And so we'll see it in action this weekend. You guys might, it only took a couple days for it to ship to me. You guys might want to wait until this weekend to see what you think about it before you all go out and buy one. I'm excited to use it though. So the cost was about $25 too, in case you're interested. That included tax.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah.
On that cable, if you go on the Swimmingly website and scroll all the way down to the bottom, sort of menu items on the very bottom, go to the store link, and you'll see that cable listed in there. It says sold out, but if you actually click into it, click on it, you'll see he gives instruction where to buy it.
And there were a couple different options, weren't there, Stephen?
I only saw one, I believe.
Okay.
But, everything you said, it says exactly what you said, but it has a link to the manufacturer where you can just click and buy the thing.
Awesome. Okay.
So it's on the store link.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions, folks?
Hey, Chris, this is Doug with South Park. And we actually were able to use Swimmingly last year. We had some inter squad meets. And I guess the biggest thing that I would just like to remind everyone is for sure you're going to need some backup timers. Occasionally we would have phones that would drop off the system. And so that would certainly be the reason to have the strobe. And then backup timers, because we would occasionally have phones drop off the system.
And Doug, by backup timers, are you talking about hard stopwatches?
Hard stopwatches.
Okay, and that's great advice.
And then we would have, we would just have that timer reported to our meet manager who was, doing the swimmingly on the side.
Okay.
Hey, Doug, on that note, were there any other issues that you could tell us about that might help us, like sunlight on the screens or water getting on the screen, anything like that?
Yeah, good questions. Yeah, we just had a table set up right by the pool, kept the phone right there. Didn't really have an issue with splash on the phones. Starting swimmingly, obviously you're going to need to make sure starter referees' phones are fully charged. We did have a couple times with this false start. We had a little bit of a difficult time navigating, like resetting the heat. That, but I think, I think we've got that figured out. But that's something that you're definitely going to want to practice.
I hope to practice getting into a lot of trouble this weekend, so we can get out a lot of that out of our systems together and just kind of figure out what to do and how to get through that stuff.
This is Regina. I'm with Doug, and it's a really simple system, so you guys will be pleasantly surprised. We had some lanyards that our iPhones were attached to around our neck, and I don't remember where we got them, but they were super handy because you've got one hand on the starting unit, and then the microphone, and then you've got the other hand on the iPhone, and there's a lot to sort of navigate. So I don't know where those came from, but they were helpful.
Kelly, I think some of those came from the Swimmingly themselves. They may have provided a bunch of those, and so that's good to know they're helpful. Regina, I think they had some for the timers also. Do you remember if your timers were able to use those?
I think our timers have them if they wanted to use them, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
When Kelly first talked to me about a new possible timing system for the league, that was my first question. How do you not drop the phone in the pool? And so glad that Swimmingly's kind of thought of some good planning there. Okay, anything else, guys? That's all been real helpful. Thank you. Kelly, did you have anything else, or we're all good? Okay, everybody, thanks so much for joining. Again, apologies for the late start. We got done maybe a little bit faster than I thought we might have, but I really appreciate y'all attention. I hope you all have a great summer. Looking forward to seeing as many of you as we can.